Welcome back to another deep dive on The Explainer. Okay, today we are literally strapping in and blasting off into the absolute terrifying void of deep space. We're taking a comprehensive look at Supermassive Games' newest interactive survival horror experience, Directive 8020. This is the 5th installment and, the highly anticipated Season 2 premiere of the Dark Pictures Anthology. So whether you're a diehard fan of those branching narratives, a sci-fi horror junkie, or even just a PC gamer looking to push your rig to its absolute limits with Unreal Engine 5, well, we've got you covered. We're going to unpack the story, break down some brand new mechanics, look objectively at the critical consensus, and then cap the whole thing off with a dedicated PC hardware optimization guide.
In space, death takes many forms. Just let that sink in for a second, right? That chilling reality is exactly where we find ourselves with Directive 8020. It's a premise that completely strips away our comfort, our control, and basically leaves us to face the cold, unfeeling dread of the cosmic unknown.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We'll start with humanity's last hope, followed by the shape-shifting threat. Then we'll look at rewriting your fate, navigate a divisive mutation, and finally, we'll wrap up with surviving the PC specs. Section 1. Humanity's Last Hope. The Doomed Cassiopeia Mission.
So the game draws some heavy inspiration from real-world history, specifically the Apollo 10 mission, acting as a dress rehearsal for an ultimate landing. But here, the stakes are unfathomably higher. Earth is ecologically ravaged, and it's dying. We are literally out of time. So the Corinth megacorporation sends this colony vessel, the Cassiopeia, to survey an exoplanet 12 light-years away. For 4 whole years, the crew is in hypersleep. But right near the end of the voyage, an unknown meteorite breaches the hull, bringing a parasitic organic growth aboard. Just 2 days later, systems fail and the ship crash lands on a hostile alien planet. Now the scattered survivors have just one objective: stay alive for 6 brutal months until a rescue ship, the Andromeda, finally arrives.
Now, Supermassive definitely continues its tradition of casting some really recognizable Hollywood talent. Lashana Lynch leads the cast, bringing some incredible power to the role of astronaut and co-pilot Brianna Young. She's joined by Danny Sapani as Commander Nolan Stafford, alongside crewmates Laura Easel, Samantha Cooper, and Yosef Cernan. And here's the kicker. You control all 5 of these characters, and the narrative hinges entirely on their fracturing trust. They were psychologically vetted for the isolation of space, sure, but the presence of an alien entity, that completely shatters their mental fortitude and breeds some intense paranoia. Section 2. The Shape-Shifting Threat. Fear of the Unknown.
Now what's really interesting here is that this isn't just about outrunning some monster. It's about the primal fear of the unknown. Drawing some heavy inspiration from John Carpenter's The Thing, the primary antagonist is this alien hunter. It's a hostile organism that perfectly mimics the human crew, and the designers leaned heavily into grotesque body horror for this. Imagine you're exploring a ruined spaceship, right? And you run into your co-pilot, but is it really them, or is it a mimic just waiting to strike? You are forced into this constant, terrifying state of suspicion regarding literally everyone's true identity.
So, to survive all this, you really have to rely on your new inventory system, the Multifunctional Utility Strap. Directive 8020 introduces what the developers are calling threatening exploration. Basically, you don't have a gun. You have to rely entirely on stealth. Your scanner detects electronics and spots those alien mimics. Your wedge tool pries open jammed doors or, stuns enemies as an absolute last resort. The shoulder-mounted flashlight illuminates the dark, but be careful because the beam will absolutely alert the alien to your position. Finally, a remote control allows you to hack computers safely from a distance. It's really this tense, nail-biting game of just staying quietly in the shadows.
Section 3. Rewriting Your Fate. The Evolution of the Dark Pictures.
This game actually represents the biggest mechanical shift in the history of the Dark Pictures franchise. Supermassive realized that, in past games, if a player's favorite character died early on just because they missed a QuickTime event, they often just abandoned the game entirely. To fix this, they've introduced 2 distinct playstyles. First, Explore Mode features the brand new Turning Point system. It's basically a visual story web where you can literally rewind time to fix a fatal mistake. It really mitigates the frustration of being tricked by an alien mimic. However, if you're a purist, Survivor Mode offers the classic, brutal Dark Pictures experience. No rewinds and permanent, immediate consequences. So, which would you choose, the safety net or the harsh reality of deep space?
Section 4. A Divisive Mutation. Mixed Critical Reception.
Whenever a long-running franchise alters its formula, there are bound to be some growing pains, and the critical consensus definitely reflects exactly that. Based on OpenCritic data, the game released to a pretty mixed reception. 61% of critics recommended the game, while 39% did not. It's a very clear split right down the middle. Some really praised the ambition, while others just felt the execution fell a bit short when compared to the heavyweights in the sci-fi horror genre.
And this brilliantly illustrates the specific pros and cons we saw across the reviews. Breaking down that divide reveals some pretty clear patterns. On the positive side, critics almost universally praised the transition to Unreal Engine 5. I mean, the game looks absolutely stunning. The voice acting, particularly Lashana Lynch, was highly captivating. Many also really appreciated that forgiving turning point system. However, reviewers felt the new stealth sequences were a bit too mundane, with, predictable enemy patrol paths. The environmental puzzles were criticized as being a little superficial, and ironically, while the concept of the rewind tree was praised, navigating its actual menus was often cited as clunky and tedious.
Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5, Surviving the PC Specs, Unreal Engine 5 Optimization Guide.
Because it is running on Unreal Engine 5, Directive 8020 is graphically intense. I mean, those cinematic lighting effects and massive sci-fi interiors will put a really heavy load on your hardware. Across the board, you are absolutely going to need 16 gigabytes of RAM and a solid-state drive. Now, to simply hit the minimum requirements for 1080p on low settings, you need an RTX 2060 or an RX 5700. Basically, that means at least 6 gigabytes of VRAM is required just to step foot onto the Cassiopeia. If you want that recommended 1440p experience on high settings, you'll need to step up to an RTX 3070 Ti or an RX 6800, pushing right into that 8 to 10 gigabyte VRAM territory.
So the crucial point is that configuring your in-game settings correctly is the real key to a stable frame rate here. For low-end PC targets, lock your resolution to 1080p, set your quality preset to low, keep ray tracing off, and honestly, most importantly, turn your upscaler, like NVIDIA DLSS or AMD FSR, to performance mode. That little tweak will easily keep you above 60 FPS. Now, if you have a high-end rig with over 10 gigs of VRAM, push that resolution to 1440p, turn your quality preset to high, flip ray tracing on, and set your upscaler to quality. And hey, if you have a top-tier GPU, just enable frame generation for the absolute peak cinematic horror experience.
Which leaves us with one final lingering thought. Given the intense claustrophobia, the absolute mind-bending paranoia of the Mimic, and the terrifying reality of deep space, could you survive the Cassiopeia, or would you be the first to fall? Really think about your own survival instincts for a second. Would you meticulously use the scanner, or would you just let the darkness consume you? Well, thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep exploring, and I will catch you in the next one.